This particular episode is for people who desire partnership in marriage, who desire to build a life with someone else, and they recognize that there's a block. Hey, y'all. Welcome back to the Fast Forward podcast. We are continuing our conversation on grief and how to manage grief as a leader. This episode, I actually wanted to talk about romantic grief because work is not just work. So for some of us, work is an extension of the full and happy life that we've cultivated personally. And sometimes work is an escape from the life that we have created. And it's something that feels unpleasant. So we go to work to get away from all of that. I wanted to speak about romantic grief because especially if you are an entrepreneur, your romantic life will make or break what you're able to accomplish in your business. When I think about my own journey to and through entrepreneurship, my choices, but also my satisfaction or dissatisfaction was closely tied to what was happening in my romantic relationships. I'll give an example of this. And this was, what's it like, 2 years ago? I think it was about 3 years ago. Yeah, because it would have been like 22. Okay. So about 3 years ago, it hit me because, business was booming. I was having a great time. I'm like traveling, doing all these amazing things. And out of nowhere, I was like, I want a boo. Was like, wait. What? Now, mind you, when I got divorced, I knew. I was like, girl, I don't know what the beep, beep, beep that was, but we need to get it together. And so I was intentionally single. Like, I knew I wanted to get married again and I would date and stuff, but I quickly realized, like, girl, your picker is off. So we need to do some healing so we could pick better. And I was cool. I kept relocating and stuff too. So I wasn't comfortable getting in something serious and I didn't know where I would live. And so I was cool with just either casually dating or not dating at all while I regrouped and built the life that I wanted. So imagine my surprise when out the blue, it was like a heavy feeling of like, you need to get married. This me to me. And I was like, what? Girl, where this coming from? We turning up. We having a good time. And I realized that that was why I wanted to be married. Because I was like, I'm enjoying my life. And it would be awesome to have someone to enjoy this with. And that's when I could finally say that I felt comfortable wanting to be married and wanted to be someone's wife again. Because I didn't want to get married out of duress. I didn't want to get married because I wanted someone to feel and complete all of the parts of me that felt uncomfortable. Because I didn't want to put that type of burden on someone because someone had put that type of burden on me. And while I do think that marriage and partnership is built for who you are, who you aren't, and who you're going to be, right? I do think that it is important to have a certain level of emotional, intellectual, and spiritual self-sufficiency so that the partnership can thrive. Like, it shouldn't be somebody just dragging dead weight. That is not cool to me. And so I think for a number of years after the divorce, I felt like, well, I'm going to be dead weight to somebody. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're going to just have to drag me. And I didn't want to be the drag to someone else's life because I knew how hard I had to work to build a life I could be proud of. And watching someone gleefully just destroy that for no reason, I never wanted to do that to someone else. But the issue with that is that it became almost like an addiction and it became a crutch to not be vulnerable in relationships and not be a partner and not even show up. Like, to literally just be like, I'm just pulling myself out of the game completely. That wasn't okay either. Now, let me get this point of clarification. If you are a person who like, I don't want to be with nobody, that's cool. I ain't talking to you, right? If you are a person who like, look, bump all this, I'm in these streets. Awesome. Love that for you. I ain't talking to you. This particular episode is for people who desire partnership in marriage, who desire to build a life with someone else, and they recognize that there's a but. So for me, at the point where I realized, like, I want to do, where my boo at? That's when I knew that I was going to have to now put in some work to become ready to receive the type of love that I desired and was willing to reciprocate. Now, that's really important as a distinction because some of us desire love and we grieve the love that we haven't received and just have not been able to cultivate. And we don't recognize that there's also a level of reciprocity with that. And I guess this is important that this is coming up during Women's History Month too, child, because I don't know what's going on with the girlies. Nah, let me just say this. I live in Atlanta, or I'm in Metro Atlanta. And when people be like, is Atlanta a real place? No, not really. I don't know what's going on in Atlanta. But what I will say is this, even as a woman, yes, you want to be nurturing and receptive and be pursued and have someone adore you, but it is a human desire to be loved and cared for. And that's not gender specific. Now, can it show up in different ways? Absolutely. Absolutely. But the idea that as a woman, I'm just there to exist and I don't have to give nothing back. I don't know. I don't know about that. And I know for me, some of my personal grief is I'll say it's the connection where I sought to convert or prove the validity of the love that I needed and the type of partnership that I needed and wanted, instead of just accepting that person don't want that, move on. And it has come up in a number of ways over the years. I'm proud of myself that I have been working my way out of that progressively. Like, so much healing has needed to take place there. And it comes from a lot of childhood trauma, like many of us. But I'm proud of the fact that I've gotten to a point where I'm like, oh, that's what you want? Okay, no problem. Thank you so much. So happy for you to get what it is that you need, but I actually don't want that. That is not the love that I desire. And so I'm going to step away. And that goes in many directions. So I've had to turn down guys that were like, I don't want my woman to do nothing for me. I can do all, I just need her to just be there. And I was like, I mean, okay, but that's not actually the type of woman that I want to be. So thank you very much. All the best to you. Right. Then I've had to turn down the men who were like, man, my woman has to work. I'll never forget. I went on a date with this guy. Y'all know this was funny. This man said, I require that my woman works. I was like, oh, really? Tell me more about that. And he goes, yeah, because I had a brother. He went to jail. And when he went to jail, it was like his wife couldn't even function without him. And da da da. And in my head, I'm thinking like, okay, well, first of all, what type of situation are y'all in where people just going in and out of jail? So first, like, let's hear more about that. But additionally, that's a very extreme example. And understanding financial management, money management is not predicated on me working. Like, that's two different things. So as I continue to listen to him, he shared his career goals. And he's like, yeah, he was a chef. And he was like, yeah, I want to transition over to being a nurse. And so, I'm going back to school. And in fact, I want to be a travel nurse because then I will be able to make a lot of money on the road. Now, I never said anything to him about this because, number one, for my safety, I don't always believe in, like, most of the time, I don't go back and forth with men. Like, I just don't trust it, especially men I don't know. A lot of these jokers is unhinged. So I don't be arguing with men. All the best to the women who do. Love that for y'all. It ain't happening with me. But I quietly processed what he was saying, and my logical mind immediately added up the inconsistencies like I was doing algebra equation. And in my head, I'm like, okay. So you saying that the culinary industry is not paying or isn't as stable as it used to be. And you low-key been seeing this shift for like 10 years, but it really ramped up at the pandemic. Now you just now deciding, this was last year, y'all, so this is 2024. Now you just now deciding that you want to get up and shift to something totally different and be a nurse. That's going to take years of school, time to actually perfect and master your craft. And then you want to go out on the road to do it. But you say you requiring that I work and you want a bunch of kids. So in other words, I would basically be like a married single mother who has to work a full-time job. I don't know where your money is going. Who knows what's happening with that? And you basically off for months at a time doing travel nursing. No, I'm not doing that. Period. Now in my head, again, all of this, all of that calculation, y'all, this happened in like 2 minutes total because I know the game. I know the game. I know the drill. I know what time it is, especially with these men. So when I'm sitting there talking to them, it's like, like it's like a little computer calculating. And quickly I'm deciding this is a wrap with this. And what I drew as a conclusion is he tired of working his behind off. He tired of working his behind off. You know, he is of a certain age, and I say to hit his mid-40s. He was disillusioned with his career, but he probably was too lazy to do what needed to be done and pivot before. So he was going to try to ride it out and see if it would get better. It didn't. And instead of him taking the opportunities during the pandemic when they were like desperate for nurses and desperate for folks to come work, he didn't want to do that. So now he's trying to see and make a pivot to make some quick money. So he think he gonna hurry up and marry somebody who can bankroll his career change. Some woman might, but I won't. I already know what time it is with that. Like, I know the drill. I know the drill. And so I was like, oh, okay, great date. Thank you. Enjoyed this. That's it. I think we might have texted after that a couple times. I could tell he was lying about some stuff. And I was like, that's it. Like, I just let it fizzle out. But that's an example of what I'm saying, where you should be clear on the type of partnership you want, and how you understand the partnership you want is leaving space to grieve the types of partnerships that you do not want and the ones that did not work out. Because there's going to be plenty of those. I had another situation. And this one was funny. I think about this every now and then. I was dating this guy. He worked a great job, had a great career, was brilliant in it from what I could see. Nice guy. We would go on great dates. We got to the point where we were in a titled relationship, and it was going pretty cool. And we ended up having a conversation about having kids. And he had a child from one of his previous marriages. And he seemed to be a great dad. You know, I enjoyed hearing the way that he spoke about his child. Because one thing I pay attention to with folks is the way they speak about the other people in their life. This is an aside. But when people speak disparagingly about everybody in their life, from the dogs to the kids to their parents to their friends to their coworkers, that's a red flag, because you probably going to end up being next on that list. So I just want to just throw that out there real quick. Okay, now we're going to get back to the story. So he mentions like, yeah, he's open to more children, but he wouldn't pressure his, new spouse if they didn't want kids, because technically he already had a child. So I'm like, all right, cool. Bet I want children. He's open to that. But we end up talking. Now, we at this restaurant, we get it in, we having a blast, eating this food. And he ends up sharing how when his child was born, he had been burned out at this job, and he essentially, again, I be listening to what people say. So the way he described it, it was like this noble thing of, oh, they fired me, and so I just, gave myself space to recover. But the way he described it in detail, I'm like, okay, so basically this man just checked out until they fired him. And instead of quitting because he didn't want to have the responsibility of doing nothing, and literally just stayed at home. The part that got me though was he goes, yeah, and I got to stay with my child for the first 6 months of their life. And I was like, wait, so where was your wife though? And he was like, oh, she went back to work. Huh, really? Really? So this postpartum woman, you made her get up and go to a job, a very stressful job, because he told me what she did, a very stressful job, and you stayed at home because you was burnt out and tired. Okay. So I said, oh, that's it. He was like, yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why me and my child are so close right now. Yeah, I'm sure you work because if you got to be the primary caregiver during the first few months of this child's life, yeah, y'all would be real close. But why the mama couldn't have that experience? So I said, oh, well, how was that for you being a stay-at-home dad? He goes, oh, I loved it. I really needed that break, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay. So future instances where he spoke about this particular ex-wife, because he'd been married a couple times, which that part I wasn't judging. Like some people are just serial monogamous and they just always need to be married. It's whatever. It's perspective. But he was talking about this wife. She got such bad attitude, da, da, da. And all I could think was like, yeah, because she probably lost respect for you when you pulled that stunt. Like, she probably was like, I don't like you no more, and just let it fizzle out. So later, remember, now I'm sitting with this in my head. Later, he comes back and goes, yeah, we were talking about kids again. And I was like, yeah, I can't wait to have kids. And I was like, remember I told you I want to be a stay-at-home mom when I have children. Now, let me give this point about being a stay-at-home mom, because I communicate this to people when I first start dating them so that they're clear on my strategy with this. When I say I want to be a stay-at-home mom, I mean that I want to have most of my income and revenue coming from residual sources. So I have been working for the past few years to align my company's service offerings, product offerings, so that it can make money for me without me having to be touching it all the time. So I shouldn't have to be working 12-hour days, because the goal is to be at home and focusing on my kids. That's something that's very important to me because of how I grew up, what I wish I had as a child, all of those things, right? All the things. So I'm clear with men about this. That is not that I'm not going to be bringing in any money. It is that I'm not going to be actively working, 40, 60 hours a week, something like that. The responses are always so fascinating. But this person in particular, when I first said it, he was like, okay. When it comes up later, says after he says this stuff about he was a stay-at-home dad, I don't know if he got into it with that lady that day and he was just on one. I don't know what was going on, but all I know is that in that particular conversation, dude was like, well, why I can't be a stay-at-home dad? And I was like, first I'm like, fix your face, because if he think that you attacking, he gonna shut down. And I need to understand what this man is talking about. So I was like, fix your face. I said, oh, well, tell me, what do you mean? It's like, nah, I'm on my coaching hat. And he was like, yeah, well, why I can't be a stay-at-home dad? Like, what if I just want to stay home and raise our children and you work? I was like, oh, okay. I was like, well, that's a perspective, but that's not quite the life that I want to live. I was like, but I'm happy to know that that is something that is important to you. I ain't say nothing to this man. So me and him continued to date for like a couple weeks more. He think everything all good. Like, we still keeping our rhythm. We're going out. We're talking every day. Blah, blah, blah. Baby, when I say I was done, was like, no, we're not going to be doing that. So when I broke up with him, I told him straight up, I said, I think you are a wonderful person. We seem to really get along well. I could see us being a great couple, to be honest. I said, but I'm very concerned that you seem to be very complacent in some areas of your life. I said, but the main thing that stands out to me is that you want to be a stay-at-home dad and I be the primary breadwinner. And that's just not the life that I want to live. At that point, it clicked for him that I had actually been listening to him our whole relationship and connection. And so now he's trying to like, oh, no, I didn't mean it. No, I think you taking it out of context. So he played that game that a lot of folks do, in particular men, where it's a misunderstanding on your part. Like, you just didn't understand me right. And I was like, no. Oh, I heard you quite clearly, sir. And I was like, I'm not even judging what you want. I just don't want that. Like, I don't want what you're offering. And because I don't want what you're offering, I don't want you. And I want to leave you to find the person that you do want. And he couldn't laugh fast enough to get me to believe that that is not what he meant. And I was just like, sir, I'm done. Like, this is a wrap. I bring that up because even in that moment, there was some grief, because it's like, man, I thought this relationship could have worked and I would love to build. Why I bring up romantic grief for leaders and entrepreneurs is because I had to realize as I processed that grief, it wasn't that I even grieved him. It was that I grieved the stability that being in a committed relationship would have given. So all of the volatility that I would have experienced in either of those connections, right, would have still felt preferable in that moment to having to start all over again with somebody. Like, I would have preferred to at least be like, well, this is my person, this getting on my nerves, it's frustrating, but I would have had a person. I would have had my person. And when I saw myself going down that road with the grief, that let me address that issue. That, hey, it's not good enough to just have something. I want to have a relationship of substance that adds mutual value and benefit. And if we are not aligned on core values and principles and life directions, that's not my person. And that's okay. And that space for that romantic grief is needed, because if not, then you will start to make poor decisions in your business that could cause irreparable damage. And you can't afford to waste that type of time. I have seen people completely crash out after a breakup and a divorce. Whether that's the blasting on social media, the crashing out on their finances, cussing people out, destroying relationships, all kinds of things. You have to manage that romantic grief. And this can also go the other way too. So I know people who are happily married, and when they got married, they didn't run a business, or maybe they had like a certain type of job, but they weren't in upper management or things like that. And so it is difficult for the family dynamic to shift given their new shift in career goals, and that takes time. So if you are a person who is happily partnered or happily married, and you like, well, I want to do something totally different. I mentioned this in another episode. Remember, you have an identity, your partner has an identity, and then the partnership, the relationship has an identity too. And your individual changes as people don't negate the need for change management in that partnership. So give yourself plenty of time and space for the partnership to adjust. So if you all have had a dynamic where either party, you work a job where you get off at a certain time, you have weekends off, so you know your rhythm of who take the kids to their after school activities, who can go, help out your aging parents with needs they have around the house, who can be there to let the gardener in, or whatever the case may be. When you start to upset the dynamic, it'll feel like the world is crashing down around you, but it's really just that, no, you just need a reset. Just need a reset. And sometimes that takes longer than you think. So if you are a person who starts your own business, starting your own business can be wildly unpredictable. Whether you purchase and acquire an existing business, merge with another one, start your own from scratch, all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's unpredictable financially. It's unpredictable in your time. It's unpredictable in the energy it requires. Sometimes you have to go back for training or education. It's just a lot. And sometimes I don't level out for years. So constantly checking in with your partner to make sure that they understand the impact of that volatility is crucial, because again, you'll think that you're fighting each other, but you're really fighting and grieving over the partnership that used to exist and the dynamic and stability that produced in your life. It's not insurmountable. You can move past it together. So it don't mean that the whole thing got to crash and burn, but it does mean that you have to communicate. So again, romantic grief in the context of leadership grief really deals with grieving what is missing and also thinking about what is changing. So let me know down in the comments. Y'all done heard some of my little crazy dating stories. I have a ton. I'll probably share them over the course of this podcast because it'd be off the chain. But yeah, let me know down in the comments, what are some of your experiences with romantic grief as a leader. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And of course, I will catch y'all in the next one. Bye.